The void above the planet Cadia burned not with the light of distant stars, but with the jagged glare of impossibility. A rift, jagged and screaming, tore the warp's fabric, and through it descended a fleet unlike any the Imperium had ever witnessed. Brass domes glinted beneath mechanical suns, while legions of moving metal crawled across the void like a plague. Their commander, a rotund figure perched atop a floating war platform, laughed, a laugh that echoed across the void with both delight and menace. Doctor Eggman, Robotnik, surveyed his new dominion. For centuries he had conquered, built, schemed, and been thwarted by anthropomorphic rodents of varying speed. But here, in the grim darkness of the far future, the rules of his universe no longer applied. Here, physics was optional, and logic could be bent as easily as steel. His robots hummed, clicked, and whirred in unison, a symphony of gears and malice. At last, Eggman declared, his voice amplified across the void, a universe ripe for conquest. Prepare yourselves, pathetic humans, and whatever those tiny space marine things are. Below, on Cadia's surface, the response was immediate. The planet's defenders, Cadian shock troops, tanks, and orbital support batteries scrambled in frantic coordination. They had fought Tyranids, Chaos, and even Orks, but never this. These machines defied classification. Massive, wheel-like walkers with serrated limbs tore through barricades with ease. Flying drones, sleek and strange, bombarded fortified positions with rapid-fire laser cannons. And everywhere, the unmistakable motif of Eggman's emblem, a smirking mustached visage, glared from the metal hulls like a herald of mockery. Captain Archerius of the 14th Cadian Regiment raised his voice above the din. All units, report. What is that? His last pistol misfired in the shaking of the ground beneath him. From the horizon, a colossal machine, resembling a spinning metallic egg with appendages sharp as blades, crashed down, obliterating a line of Cadian infantry. Impossible, the sergeant muttered, staggering backward as a mechanical arm swept past him, crushing a tank under its girth. Meanwhile, Eggman was in his element. He maneuvered his floating command platform closer to the planet's surface, observing the chaos with glee. Magnificent, he said, tapping a console that caused a series of robotic legions to surge forward in perfect synchronization. They think their guns and missiles can stop me, foolish mortals. My genius is beyond comprehension. Now, my loyal robots show them the Eggman effect. The first wave of robots surged onto Cadia's surface. Egg pawns, spherical drones with drill appendages, erupted from hidden hatches, tearing through barricades and setting fire to bunkers. Buzz bombers swarmed over the Cadian lines, dropping explosive ordnance with terrifying precision. And above them, the colossal egg carrier, a floating fortress that defied all known engineering, hovered like a dark sun. From it, Eggman unleashed his ultimate creation, the Death Egg Tank, a massive war engine bristling with cannons, missiles, and spinning blades, each one capable of leveling a city block. Imperial response was immediate, yet chaotic. The Adeptus Mechanicus scrambled to understand the foreign technology. The metallurgy impossible. It violates the Omnissiah's principles, muttered Tech, Priest Dominus Varric, as he scanned the approaching Death Egg Tank. These machines, they should not exist. They should not function, yet they advance. The priest's servo, Skull whirred anxiously, its ocular lenses reflecting the mechanical horrors descending from orbit. High above, orbital bombardments tore at Eggman's fleet, but the invaders' engineering defied expectation. Shields of unknown composition absorbed plasma and macro. Cannon fire with ease. Eggman watched, amused, as Cadian tanks exploded beneath his mechanical armies, and his robotic drones evaded orbital strikes with uncanny precision. "Pathetic," he chortled. "Your missiles, your orbital firepower, mere confetti. Witness real engineering genius, humans." Amidst the chaos, small squads of Space Marines arrived, the first line of elite defense. Tactical squads from the Ultramarines and Blood Angels chapters deployed via drop pods, their landing ripping through the earth like thunder. Sergeant Darius, leading a squad of 10, observed the incoming mechanical horror with a mixture of disbelief and righteous fury. "Brothers, what abomination is this?" he growled. Chainswords ignited, bolters primed. They charged into the melee, but the Eggman robots adapted instantly, spinning and cutting with surgical precision. Every swing met resistance from mechanical plating that seemed to anticipate their every move. Eggman, observing from orbit, leaned forward with a grin. "Ah, the infamous Space Marines. My old friends, my old obstacles. Do you know what happens when cartoon logic meets divine war power?" He tapped a sequence on his console, and dozens of mechanical legs, drills, and cannons shifted in terrifying unison, cutting off the Marines' advance. Yet, for the first time, Eggman noticed something different. These warriors were not like Sonic or Tails. They did not falter, they did not flee. Each bolt or shot, each blade strike, met his machines with unyielding fury. "Interesting," he mused, tapping his chin. "Perhaps this will be more entertaining than I anticipated." Meanwhile, the war-torn planet itself responded. Cities collapsed, smoke choked the skies, and the ground split under the relentless assault. Yet pockets of human resistance persisted: tank brigades, artillery batteries, and lone snipers, each determined to buy time, each determined to survive. In one ruined city, a young Cadian soldier named Leona climbed a crumbling wall, her lasgun trembling in her hands. She stared at the massive Death Egg tank looming above her. "By the Emperor, what are you?" she whispered before firing a desperate shot. The battle had only just begun. Eggman's invasion was not simply a war. It was an event that would warp reality itself. His machines did not merely kill, they humiliated, mocked, and defied understanding. And as the sky burned red with fire and the ground shook beneath mechanical feet, one truth became clear to all who survived the first hours of the onslaught. The galaxy would never, ever be the same. From orbit, Eggman laughed. "Welcome, Warhammer universe, to a new age of genius." And in that instant, the Warhammer 40K universe met its strangest, most unpredictable enemy yet. A man whose obsession with mustaches and machinery would clash with the grim darkness of the far future in ways no one could foresee. The morning sky over Cadia burned crimson, streaked with smoke and ash. The planet's surface, already marred by cratered cities and shattered defenses, quivered beneath the metallic march of Eggman's legions. Brass-bladed egg pawns scuttled across once familiar streets, twisting broken tanks beneath serrated limbs, while buzz bombers patrolled the skies, dropping explosives in rhythmic precision. The Death Egg tank, an impossible fortress on treads and thrusters, had established itself in the central plaza of Cadian Prime, its weapons sweeping with mechanical accuracy. From the distant horizon, a column of Space Marine drop pods descended, piercing the smoke-choked sky with fire and fury. Sergeant Darius of the Ultramarines landed first, bolter in hand, chainsword humming. Around him, his brothers of the chapter readied themselves, their ceramite armor glowing in the dying light. "Brothers," Darius barked, "today we face a foe unlike any in history. They are machines, yes, but not of our universe. Their technology is absurd, their purpose deranged, yet we fight as the Emperor commands. For Cadia, for the Imperium, the Marines surged from their pods, bolters thundering, chainswords carving through egg pawns with feral precision. Yet even as they fought, the sheer numbers of Eggman's forces became evident. For every drone destroyed, two more seemed to take its place, appearing from hidden hatches, skylines, or even the ground itself. High above, Eggman adjusted his monocle, like goggles. Ah, the blue-armored freaks think they can resist me. Delightful. He tapped a console on his floating platform, sending waves of smaller robots, the egg flails, to swarm the space marines. Each robot was equipped with rotating blades, spinning like deadly tornadoes, cutting down the ultramarines in a dance of metal and sparks. But the space marines adapted quickly. Sergeant Darius shouted commands over the cacophony of explosions and whirring machinery. Tactical squads split into flanking positions. Assault marines leapt from rooftops with jump packs, and Devastator squads unleashed missiles on the advancing Death Egg tank. Bolter rounds ripped into egg pawns, setting them ablaze, while chainswords shredded metal limbs in showers of sparks. Yet, even as the Marines struck back, Eggman's machines seemed to anticipate their every move, adapting in seconds as if mocking their efforts. On the horizon, a new threat emerged. A cotter of Ork warbands, drawn by the commotion, had decided to join the battlefield. Greens, skinned brutes in ramshackle tanks and flying contraptions, charged indiscriminately at both Cadian defenders and Eggman's robots. Explosions rocked the ruined cityscape, adding chaos to an already incomprehensible battlefield. Eggman's laughter echoed across the war zone. Ah, competition, this makes things far more interesting. Meanwhile, the Adeptus Mechanicus worked feverishly to understand the alien invader. Tech, Priest Dominus Varric examined a captured egg pawn, his robes singed from stray energy discharges. This construction, it defies every principle of the Omnissiah. He murmured, "There is no known alloy, no known circuitry, yet it functions. It moves with intent, with malice. This is heresy of the highest order." Servo skulls buzzed, recording every movement, every vibration. The Mechanicus realized that conventional weaponry was insufficient. They would need ingenuity as extreme as Eggman's own madness to counter him. On the ground, Sergeant Darius led a charge into the central plaza, aiming to strike at the Death Egg tank directly. The Ultramarines fired bolters, their disciplined volleys creating momentary openings in Eggman's defenses. Chainswords bit into robotic limbs, sparks flying, while the Marines fought with unyielding fury. But the Death Egg tank's weapons responded instantly. Spinning blades cut through masonry, missile pods fired in deadly arcs, and the machine's cannon unleashed searing energy that tore through the plaza. Eggman, perched above it all, cheered, "Yes, fight, struggle, show me the extent of your pathetic courage." He activated a new system, a swarm of robots that erupted from the Death Egg tank's hull, like a river of metallic insects, seeking weak points in the Space Marine's armor. Sergeant Darius's men found themselves battling on multiple fronts, fighting the swarm while avoiding the tank's massive blades and energy blasts. In the midst of the chaos, a lone Cadian artillery commander, Major Terv, coordinated a desperate counterstrike. "Focus fire on the flanks," he ordered, directing a salvo of cannons at Eggman's outer forces. Dozens of egg pawns exploded under the concentrated fire, leaving smoking husks behind. The swarm momentarily faltered, giving the Space Marines a fleeting advantage. Seizing the opportunity, Sergeant Darius led an assault squad straight toward the Death Egg tank's base. Bolters roared, chainswords whirred, and jump packs screamed through the air. For a moment, the impossible seemed possible. The Marines had broken through Eggman's front lines, forcing the machines back, if only slightly. But Eggman was ready. With a press of a button, the Death Egg tank rotated a massive turret toward the advancing Ultramarines. Energy beams lanced from its weapons, throwing Marines aside like ragdolls. "Oh, no, no, no," Eggman exclaimed gleefully. "Not so fast. You think you can reach me. You think you can stop genius. Ha!" Despite the carnage, the humans and space Marines refused to yield. Bolters fired relentlessly, chainswords cut tirelessly, and tanks blasted at anything that moved. The planet itself groaned under the combined weight of alien technology and human resistance. For the first time, Eggman realized something he hadn't anticipated. These creatures, though small and fragile by comparison, possessed a discipline, a tenacity, a hatred unlike any he had encountered. The battle raged for hours. Cadia's landscape became a twisted tableau of metal and fire. Eggman's machines advanced inexorably, yet the Imperium adapted, improvising strategies, exploiting weaknesses, and refusing to submit. And in the shadows, the Adeptus Mechanicus worked feverishly to create countermeasures, scavenging Eggman's designs to turn his own technology against him. By nightfall, neither side had claimed victory. The central plaza lay in ruins, Death Egg tank still upright, its weapons sparking intermittently, while the Space Marines regrouped amid shattered streets and burning wreckage. The ground shook with every distant explosion, a reminder that this war had only begun. Eggman, observing the battlefield from his hovering platform, laughed, a sound both triumphant and unhinged. "Marvelous. This is far better than Sonic or those meddling rodents. War, destruction, chaos, and genius." His mechanical minions reassembled, preparing for the next wave. Yes, the Imperium has spirit, but spirit is no match for invention. Soon, the galaxy will bow to Eggman. And so ended the first counterstrike, a clash that left scars across Cadia and marked the beginning of an unprecedented war. The Imperium had shown it could resist, but Eggman's ingenuity and madness promised that the battles ahead would test the limits of courage, ingenuity, and survival. Smoke choked the skies above Cadia, turning day into an oppressive twilight of fire and ash. The first counterstrike had failed to halt the invasion, and the Imperium's forces regrouped in shattered fortresses, their morale battered but unbroken. The streets of Cadian Prime were littered with twisted metal, shattered tanks, and the smoking husks of egg pawns. And yet, for all the destruction, a new threat loomed. At the heart of the invasion, Dr. Ivo Eggman adjusted his monocle, like goggles, his rotund figure perched atop the Death Egg tank as it slowly rotated in the ruined central plaza. "Yes, yes, this is more like it," he murmured, tapping a sequence on his console. "Why settle for conventional destruction when you can warp it?" The Death Egg tank shuddered, its hull glowing with strange energies. Eggman had discovered a method of harnessing the warp, crude, unpredictable, and terrifyingly effective. Small rifts opened along the tank's plating, leaking unnatural energy that twisted reality in localized pockets. Buildings contorted and cracked, streets warped, and the air shimmered with impossible heat and light. "Yes, yes, the galaxy bends to genius," he cackled. Below, the Adeptus Mechanicus worked feverishly to understand this new anomaly. Tech, Priest Dominus Varric's lenses glowed red as he scanned the shimmering rifts. "Impossible, the materials, the energy. This is beyond heresy. This is abomination. These machines are not merely foreign, they are unnatural, forged with knowledge no mortal should possess." His servos skulls floated closer to the rifts, analyzing, recording, and trembling with barely contained fear. We must adapt. We must counteract, or all is lost. Meanwhile, the Space Marines prepared for the Imperium's next decisive strike. Sergeant Darius of the Ultramarines surveyed the ruined city from a high wall. "Brothers," he growled, "the enemy wields technology we cannot comprehend, but we are Space Marines. We adapt, we fight, and we endure. Cadia must hold. The Emperor demands it." Tactical squads moved through ruined streets, bolters firing in disciplined bursts. Assault squads leapt from rooftops, chainswords ignited, cutting through Eggman's advancing egg pawns. Devastator squads set up heavy weapon emplacements, targeting the Death Egg tank and other massive units. Despite their courage, every move was met with Eggman's ingenuity. Buzz bombers rained explosives from above, and egg flails surged like metallic storms, spinning and slicing with lethal precision. From orbit, the Death Egg carrier hovered, launching waves of reinforcements. Eggman had begun integrating captured human technology into his machines, fusing the Imperium's designs with his own chaotic genius. Walkers now bore bolters, tanks carried rotating blades, and drones hummed with warp-tainted energy. Every strike from the Imperium seemed to strengthen his army, each victory fueling Eggman's unrelenting confidence. Amidst the chaos, Sergeant Darius noticed a new phenomenon: a squad of Cadian soldiers wielding weapons salvaged from destroyed egg pawns. Tech, Priest engine seers had managed to reprogram a handful of Eggman's smaller machines, turning them against their brethren. "It's crude, it's dangerous," Darius muttered, firing a bolter at a nearby egg flail, "but it works. Use it." The tide of the battle shifted in small, brutal increments. Space Marines and Imperial forces clawed back some territory, clearing streets, rescuing survivors, and establishing temporary strongpoints. Yet Eggman's creativity was limitless. Towers rose from the warped streets overnight, mechanical monstrosities emerged from rubble, and rifts of warp energy sprouted across the battlefield, spewing chaos and death. In one shattered plaza, Leona, the young Cadian soldier, led a desperate push with a squad of survivors. Her lasgun discharged continuously, targeting Eggman's smaller machines. Sparks flew as she shot through a wall of egg pawns, opening a narrow path toward the Death Egg tank. Sergeant Darius joined her, chainsword slicing through the warped metal like a beacon of hope. "Forward, every inch counts," he bellowed. Eggman, watching from his hovering platform, laughed with manic glee. "Brave, yes, but foolish. You fight like ants against a storm. Observe my next masterpiece." He pressed a series of buttons, and the Death Egg tank shuddered violently. From hidden compartments, massive warp cannons emerged, crackling with energy drawn directly from the rifts. He fired. Entire city blocks disintegrated in brilliant, screaming arcs of energy. The streets became rivers of molten metal and fire, and yet the Imperium did not falter. In the ruined citadel, Tech, Priest Dominus Varric devised a plan. Using captured components from Eggman's own machines, he began constructing a countermeasure, a massive field generator capable of neutralizing warp and induced distortions. "It is dangerous," he admitted to the gathered officers. "It may destroy the rift, or it may annihilate half the city, but without it, all is lost." The officers, weary and terrified, nodded. Survival demanded the risk. As night fell, the city was a tableau of fire and steel. The Death Egg tank loomed above the skyline like a daemonic sun, its warphog, mented weapons glowing ominously. The Imperial forces, battered but unbowed, prepared for one final assault to reclaim the city's central plaza. The first skirmishes of the night were brutal. Buzz bombers swarmed over rooftops, egg flails tore through streets, and robots surged from the Death Egg tank in unending waves. Yet the Space Marines, bolstered by human ingenuity and unyielding courage, held their ground, trading death for inches of territory. Eggman, perched above it all, smiled. Yes, yes, the spirit of resistance is commendable, amusing even. But spirit alone cannot defeat genius. He activated a final, terrifying weapon. A massive warp drill emerging from the side of the Death Egg tank, capable of tunneling through reality itself. The ground shook violently, rifts of warped energy opening wherever the drill struck. Buildings bent and twisted, soldiers screamed, and for a moment the battlefield seemed poised on the edge of total annihilation. And yet the Imperium endured. Sergeant Darius, bolter smoking, chainsword blazing, shouted above the din, "Cadia stands, the Emperor demands it." In the shadows of the war-torn city, a war of intellect and brute force continued. Eggman's machines advanced, impervious and alien. The Imperial forces adapted, fought, and held for now. But as the night deepened, one truth became clear. The siege of Cadia had only begun, and the galaxy would never again know what it meant to face such an unnatural foe. The first light of Cadia's blood, red dawn revealed the full scope of the devastation. Entire districts had been razed, streets twisted into impossible geometries by Eggman's warp-infused machines. Fires burned in every direction, sending smoke and ash swirling into the sky, mingling with the ever-present haze of war. The Death Egg tank, still upright and unyielding, stood as the unholy epicenter of Eggman's dominion, its hull gleaming with cruel, golden brass and glowing veins of war energy. Dr. Ivo Eggman, perched atop his hovering platform, laughed like a god unchallenged. "Cadia, my playground," he declared. "You resisted bravely, but it's time for true genius to take the stage." From the Death Egg tank's side, new mechanisms unfolded. Massive wings, powered by warp reactors, unfurled with a metallic screech. A colossal drill emerged, spinning like a sun of steel and energy, ready to pierce not just the planet's crust, but the very fabric of reality. Eggman had dubbed it the Death Egg Ascendant, a war engine capable of annihilating entire cities in minutes and bending reality in its wake. Below, the Imperium's forces had reorganized. Sergeant Darius convened with his Space Marine squads and the remaining Cadian regiments. This is unlike anything we've ever faced," Darius said grimly, eyes scanning the horizon. "But we are the Emperor's sword and shield. We adapt, we endure, and we strike where the enemy is weakest." Major Terv, overseeing human artillery, added, "Our previous strikes barely scratched that abomination. But if we focus fire on its stabilizers and deploy countermeasures against the warp distortions, we might slow it down just long enough for a coordinated assault." Even as plans were drawn, the psychological toll of the invasion weighed heavily. Soldiers whispered of machines that mocked their courage, of impossibilities that defied comprehension. Nightmares of spinning drills and laughing metalheads haunted even the strongest among them. Yet hope remained, forged in fire, discipline, and an unyielding belief in the Emperor's will. The Death Egg Ascendant advanced. Every step sent tremors across Cadia's ruins, warping streets, cracking walls, and scattering survivors. Buzz bombers swarmed above, dropping explosives with lethal precision, while egg pawns scuttled across streets like a living tide of metal. The city quaked beneath the machine's immense weight, as if the planet itself feared the monstrosity. Sergeant Darius led his squad into the heart of the city. "Stay close, focus your fire, and remember, we fight not just for Cadia, but for every soul the Emperor watches over. Bolters roared, chainswords ignited, and jump packs propelled assault marines into rooftops for close range strikes. Sparks flew as metal met ceramite in a violent ballet. Eggman observed with manic delight. Ah, so courageous, so foolish. You think you can oppose me with mere flesh and bone. Witness the power of genius fused with the warp. He activated the Death Egg Ascendant's warp core, and reality itself seemed to shiver. Streets bent unnaturally, walls twisted like molten wax, and gravity shifted in erratic bursts. Space Marines found themselves stumbling, disoriented, their disciplined formations threatened by forces that obeyed no natural law. Amid the chaos, a small cotter of Cadian engineers, under the guidance of Tech, Priest Dominus Varric, worked furiously. They had managed to reverse, engineer fragments of Eggman's technology, creating localized stabilizers capable of momentarily countering the warp distortions. It is imperfect, temporary, Varric warned, but it gives our warriors a fighting chance. Space Marines pressed forward, bolstered by the engineers' devices. Assault squads closed in on the base of the Death Egg Ascendant, firing plasma and bolter rounds at its stabilizers. Sparks and explosions erupted across the hull, yet Eggman's monstrosity remained frighteningly resilient. Each attack, each explosion, seemed to fuel the machine, drawing energy from the warp rifts that laced its structure. Eggman's laughter echoed across the city. Yes, fight, struggle, your courage is delicious, but genius cannot be resisted. The Death Egg Ascendant will crush all opposition, and the galaxy will finally bow to Dr. Ivo Eggman. The first clash with the Death Egg Ascendant proved devastating. Bolters tore through lesser robots, plasma scorched the streets, and grenades shattered metal limbs. Yet the Ascendant adapted with terrifying speed, spinning drills, firing energy beams, and hurling waves of robots that tore through human and marine alike. Each moment was a desperate dance between ingenuity and destruction. In the thick of battle, Sergeant Darius noticed a pattern in the Death Egg Ascendant's movements, a subtle pause in its drills before firing warp beams, a split-second hesitation in its defensive routines. There, he shouted to his squad, "Target the stabilizers during the pause. Focus fire, now." Bolters and plasma cannons concentrated on the precise points. Sparks erupted, systems overloaded, and for a fleeting instant, the colossal machine faltered. Eggman's voice, amplified across the battlefield, cracked with frustration. "What? Impossible. My genius foiled. No, no." His hands flew across his console, attempting to compensate, yet the Space Marines and Cadian forces exploited the window. The Death Egg Ascendant shuddered violently, the warp distortions momentarily subsiding, giving hope to the beleaguered defenders. Amid the ruins, Leona, the young Cadian soldier, moved with renewed determination. Her squad advanced alongside the Space Marines, firing at egg pawns and buzz bombers, clearing paths through the mechanical tide. For Cadia, she shouted, bolter blazing, her voice cutting through smoke and chaos. By nightfall, the battle had reached a tenuous stalemate. The Death Egg Ascendant had suffered damage, but remained functional, a grim reminder of Eggman's ingenuity and the terrifying adaptability of his machines. Imperial forces held pockets of territory, regrouping in the shadow of the colossal war engine, planning the next strike. Above the battlefield, Eggman adjusted his goggles, a mixture of anger and admiration on his face. "Interesting, very interesting," he murmured. "These creatures, they fight, they endure. But genius will always find a way." He tapped a console, preparing new modifications for the Ascendant incorporating lessons learned from the day's combat. The siege of Cadia had entered a new, more terrifying phase. Eggman's warped genius clashed with the disciplined might of the Imperium, creating a battlefield where science, strategy, and madness collided. The city smoldered under the strain, and all who survived understood a singular truth. This war had no precedent, no rules, and no certainty of victory. And so, as the red skies darkened, the Death Egg Ascendant loomed like a demonic monolith over Cadia, promising that the next day would be even bloodier, more desperate, and more uncertain than the last. The first glimmers of dawn struggled to pierce the smoke-choked skies above Cadia. Fires raged unchecked, casting long shadows across the ruins of once proud cities. The Death Egg Ascendant, though damaged from the previous day's assault, still loomed over the battlefield like a malevolent god, its spinning drills and glowing warp veins a constant reminder of Eggman's genius and madness. But Eggman was not satisfied. His mind, as chaotic as it was brilliant, hungered for escalation. The Ascendant impressive, he muttered, adjusting his monocle, like goggles, but too predictable, too mechanical. What the galaxy needs is fear, horror, the mechanical horror. From hidden compartments within his massive war engines, Eggman released his newest creation, a fusion of biological tissue, orc salvage, and warp. Corrupted machinery. Limbs of living muscle intertwined with metal, glowing veins pulsating with chaotic energy. Eyes that were both organic and Sir Layden scanned the battlefield, hunting, calculating, and adapting. From the Death Egg Ascendant emerged this abomination, towering above both human and space marine, shrieking with a voice that was part roar, part mechanical screech. Sergeant Darius, surveying the battlefield, felt a chill run through him despite his ceramite armor. By the Emperor, what is that? He whispered, bolter trembling in his gauntleted hands. Around him, his tactical squads and assault marines fired relentlessly, bolts and plasma streaking toward the creature, yet each shot seemed only to annoy, rather than harm, the monstrosity. Major Terv, coordinating Imperial artillery from a distant hill, barked orders. Focus every weapon on its legs. Mobility is its weakness. Devastators, fire at the stabilizers. Infantry, hold the line. The mechanical horror advanced, leaving devastation in its wake. Entire streets buckled beneath its massive weight. Buildings, already warped by Eggman's previous experiments, collapsed with terrifying ease. Its hybrid limbs lashed out, tearing apart tanks and space marine squads alike. Buzz bombers swarmed in support, dropping explosives with deadly precision, while egg pawns scuttled ahead, creating chaos and confusion. Eggman watched with manic delight from his hovering platform. Yes, look at it. A perfect fusion of flesh, metal, and warp. Nothing in this universe can withstand me. He pressed a button, and the creature emitted a deafening roar, the sound vibrating through the ruined streets, breaking the morale of many human troops. Yet the Imperium was not defeated. Sergeant Darius rallied his squads with unwavering determination. Brothers, do not falter. The Emperor watches. Strike with precision. Strike with purpose. Assault marines leapt from rooftops, chainswords igniting, cutting through the creature's armored plating where possible. Tactical squads coordinated suppressive fire, while devastators focused on weak points identified from earlier clashes. Tech, Priest Dominus Varric, observing the battlefield through sensors and servo skulls, muttered the creature. It is a fusion of warp energy and biological tissue stabilized through machinery. If we disrupt the energy flow, we may weaken it enough for direct assault. His servitors scurried across the streets, carrying experimental devices designed to emit localized EMP pulses combined with psychic inhibitors, hoping to exploit the creature's unnatural synthesis. The first wave of attack began. Devastator squads fired concentrated macro bolts, hitting exposed conduits along the creature's torso. Sparks flew, biological tissue sizzled, and mechanical limbs jerked in pain. For a fleeting moment, the abomination faltered. Eggman's voice erupted over the battlefield. "Fools, do you think you can harm perfection? I am genius incarnate." Leona, the young Cadian soldier, moved alongside the Space Marines, firing her lasgun with unrelenting precision. "We will stop you," she shouted, her voice defiant against the mechanical roar. She ducked under a crushing mechanical claw, firing into the creature's side as sparks and blood splattered across the ruins. The battle raged with increasing intensity. The bio-mechanical horror, adapting to every attack, began to mutate mid-combat. New limbs sprouted, reinforced with both living muscle and metallic plating. Warp energy surged through its veins, causing streets and buildings nearby to distort and crumble. It was not merely a machine or a creature. It was an unpredictable force of destruction, a living weapon of chaos. Eggman, exhilarated, unleashed a secondary wave. Hundreds of robots designed to latch onto the creature, enhancing its combat abilities in real time. Each drone injected energy into the beast, repairing damage almost instantly, creating a nearly unstoppable juggernaut of flesh, metal, and warp. Despite the overwhelming odds, the Imperium refused to yield. Bolters roared, plasma seared, chainswords ignited, and artillery fired in precise barrages. Space Marines fought with grim determination, pushing forward inch by inch. Cadian soldiers held trenches and barricades, their lasguns providing vital support to prevent the creature from overwhelming the lines entirely. In one crucial moment, Sergeant Darius observed a pattern in the creature's movements. Its warp energy, though formidable, pulsed rhythmically, a telltale sign of synchronization with the Death Egg Ascendant. Target the Ascendant, disrupt its energy flow, and we can weaken the horror, he shouted to Major Terv. Coordinated fire from Space Marines, Cadians, and artillery units converged on the Death Egg Ascendant. Explosions erupted, energy conduits overloaded, and the warp distortions flickered and wavered. The bio-mechanical horror faltered, staggering in confusion. For the first time, it seemed vulnerable. Eggman's voice, filled with panic and rage, echoed across the battlefield. "No, impossible, my perfect creation imperfect." He hammered the controls, attempting to stabilize his creation, but the Imperium's coordinated assault continued, relentless and precise. As night fell, the battlefield was littered with destruction. Buildings burned, streets were torn apart, and the bio-mechanical horror had been weakened but not destroyed. Imperial forces regrouped in the ruins, tending to the wounded and preparing for the next phase of combat. Eggman, undeterred, hovered above the battlefield, already planning modifications for the creature and the Death Egg Ascendant. "Interesting, very interesting," he murmured, his mind racing with schemes. "They fight well, but perfection cannot be stopped. The galaxy will be mine." The siege of Cadia had reached a terrifying new height. The Imperium had proven its resilience, yet Eggman's bio-mechanical monstrosity was a grim reminder that genius, madness, and warp energy combined were forces no one had ever faced. The sky over Cadia had turned black, pierced only by streaks of fire and the unnatural glow of warp rifts. Smoke and ash choked the air, the stench of burning metal and flesh blending into a noxious fog that covered the ruined cityscape. Eggman's forces had entrenched themselves across the shattered streets, the Death Egg Ascendant now bristling with new warp-fueled superweapons. pulsing energy cannons, spinning drills, and tentacle-like mechanical arms stretched across the horizon, each one capable of leveling entire districts. From the horizon came the thunderous response. Imperial Titans, massive war engines of the Adeptus Mechanicus, lumbered into view. The sky trembled as their legs crushed ruins underfoot, their weapons opening fire with cataclysmic energy. A Warlord-class Titan roared, its macro cannons firing arcs of molten plasma, while a Reaver-class staggered forward, its power fists and volcano cannons tearing through egg pawns and warpog, mented constructs alike. Sergeant Darius watched from the rubble of a destroyed plaza, bolter in hand. Finally, reinforcements, he muttered. Titans will give us the edge we need. Now we strike at the heart of this madness. Eggman's monocle, like goggles, gleamed as he observed the incoming Imperium Titans. Ah, massive metal monstrosities, how quaint, he exclaimed. Yes, yes, more targets for genius. With a flourish of his hands, he activated a new array of warp-fueled weaponry on the Death Egg Ascendant. Streams of energy lanced into the sky, warping reality as bolts of raw chaos energy struck incoming Titans, sending plumes of fire into the smoke-choked heavens. On the streets, the biomechanical horror rampaged, tearing through Imperial forces to protect its master's creations. Its limbs, now twisted further by Eggman's warp tinkering, were both flesh and steel, pulsating with dark energy. It roared, a sound both organic and mechanical, and surged forward toward the advancing Titans. Sergeant Darius and his space marines moved with disciplined precision, using the ruined streets as cover. Assault squads leapt onto buildings, chainswords ignited, bolters thundering. Tactical squads provided suppressive fire, targeting the horror's weak points identified during previous encounters. Devastators focused plasma and missile fire on its stabilizers, attempting to slow its advance. Eggman laughed from his hovering platform above the battlefield. Marvelous, chaos, destruction genius in motion. Do you see? No one in this galaxy can withstand me. He tapped a sequence on the Death Egg Ascendant's console, causing new appendages to sprout, each bristling with spinning drills, energy beams, and warp-fused claws. The first clash between Titans and Eggman's creations was cataclysmic. Macro cannons fired volleys that shattered waves of egg pawns and buzz bombers, while the Titan's volcano cannons erupted in columns of molten death, reducing entire city blocks to smoldering rubble. The biomechanical horror lunged, its warp energy surging, smashing power fists against the towering warlord-class Titan. Sparks and blood, both organic and mechanical, sprayed across the battlefield. Amid the chaos, the Adeptus Mechanicus deployed experimental anti-warp devices. Servitors carried massive generators, projecting fields intended to disrupt Eggman's warp-fused weaponry. Energy arcs pulsed through the ground, hitting the Death Egg Ascendant's hull and the horror's body, causing temporary malfunctions and flickers in their movements. Sergeant Darius saw an opening. Brothers, focus on the Ascendant's stabilizers. We can bring it down. Assault squads surged forward, bolters blazing, plasma searing metal and flesh alike. Sparks flew as Space Marines and Cadian soldiers fought side by side, each step forward paid for with blood. Eggman's laughter turned to frustration. Impossible. No one can resist genius. He activated defensive shields, warp rifts swirling around the Death Egg Ascendant, distorting gravity and reality. Streets folded upon themselves, buildings twisted into impossible angles, and both humans and Titans struggled to maintain footing. Yet, even in the face of chaos, the Imperium adapted. Titans fired coordinated volleys, Space Marines exploited pauses in the enemy's movements, and the Adeptus Mechanicus recalibrated anti-warp devices in real time. The battlefield became a maelstrom of fire and metal. Titans stomped through ruined streets, firing relentlessly. Space Marines engaged the horror directly, using jump packs and chainswords to strike at weak points. Cadians manned heavy weapons, providing suppressive fire. Egg pawns scuttled into the fray, buzz bombers dove from above, and warp-fueled energy tore holes in the cityscape. For the first time, Eggman's forces began to falter. The Death Egg Ascendant shuddered under concentrated Titan fire. The bio-mechanical horror roared in pain as plasma and bolter fire ripped through its stabilizers. Sparks, smoke, and blood clouded the battlefield, creating a nightmarish tableau of fire, metal, and warp energy. Eggman, though furious, remained unbowed. Ah, excellent. Resistance is entertaining. Adapt, survive, fight, yes. This will make the final victory all the sweeter. He began preparing new modifications, integrating damage assessments and battlefield data into the Death Egg Ascendant, determined to crush the Imperium's new counteroffensive. By nightfall, both sides were battered but unbroken. Titans smoked, buildings smoldered, and the streets ran red with blood and molten metal. Imperial forces had stalled Eggman's advance, yet the Death Egg Ascendant remained operational, the bio-mechanical horror still alive, a grotesque testament to its creator's genius and madness. Sergeant Darius, standing atop a ruined tower, surveyed the battlefield. "We have held for now, but this war is far from over. Eggman's genius grows with every moment. We must strike harder, faster, smarter. Cadia must endure, or the galaxy will fall." Eggman, high above in his hovering platform, watched with manic glee. Yes, yes, soon, all will bow to genius. The Imperium pathetic, but strong will be my finest challenge yet. The siege of Cadia had escalated to unprecedented heights. Titans clashed with warp-fueled monstrosities, Space Marines battled bio-mechanical horrors, and the city itself trembled beneath the weight of impossible genius. One truth remained undeniable. The galaxy had never faced anything like Dr. Ivo Eggman, and the battles to come would push humanity, the Imperium, and all who dared resist to their absolute limits. The ground of Cadia trembled as though the planet itself was crying out in agony. Cracks, deep and unnatural, split the streets and buildings, glowing with an eerie warp and fused light. Eggman's forces had pushed beyond conventional warfare, merging his engineering genius with the chaos of the warp in ways the Imperium had never encountered. From his hovering platform, Eggman surveyed the battlefield with manic delight. Yes, yes, time for the ultimate test of genius. If mere machines and creatures are entertaining, reality itself will be divine. With a series of taps and turns, he activated his newest creation, the Dimensional Core, a device integrated into the Death Egg Ascendant capable of tearing Cadia into overlapping realities, each slightly twisted and unstable. Below, Sergeant Darius observed the fissures spreading through the city. By the Emperor, the planet itself bends under their hand. His tactical squads struggled to maintain formation as gravity shifted, streets twisted, and impossible angles distorted perception. Buildings folded in on themselves, and areas once clear became inaccessible. It was as if Cadia had become a labyrinth of ever-shifting streets and warped reality. Major Terv barked orders to surviving artillery units. Concentrate fire on the Ascendant's base, stabilize the perimeter, use every experimental device we have. Servitors carried anti-warp generators and experimental EMP emitters. desperately trying to counter the chaos radiating from Eggman's machine. Bolters and lasguns fired into distorted terrain, their tracers bending unnaturally, yet even in warped space, human precision struck true. The Space Marines adapted quickly. Sergeant Darius led squads through shifting streets, using jump packs to bypass ruptures and collapsed structures. Focus fire, target weak points in the Ascendant, he roared. Assault squads leapt onto tilted rooftops, chainswords ignited, cutting through egg pawns and minor mechanical constructs. Tactical squads fired in tight volleys, providing suppressive fire to advance squads. Eggman's laughter, amplified across the battlefield, cut through smoke and warped air. Marvelous, chaos, destruction, genius. This is the true art of war. The dimensional core glowed brighter, tearing at the fabric of reality itself. Small squads vanished momentarily, reappearing twisted and disoriented. Some fused partially with rubble or their own equipment. Soldiers screamed, bolters jammed, and even Titans struggled to maintain footing as the city itself shifted under Eggman's will. The biomechanical horror, now further empowered by the dimensional core, surged forward, its limbs ripping and reshaping unpredictably. Warp energy pulsed through it, allowing it to phase through rubble or extend mechanical limbs impossibly far. It struck Titans with crushing blows, sending debris flying and creating temporary breaches in the Imperium's defensive lines. Amid the chaos, Tech, Priest Dominus Varric worked furiously to coordinate the Imperium's countermeasures. We must overload the core, focus the Titan's weaponry, synchronize EMP bursts, and coordinate Space Marine strikes. If we fail, reality itself will collapse. Servitors scurried across the streets, connecting generators, calibrating devices, and risking death to maintain the fragile countermeasure network. Sergeant Darius spotted a moment of opportunity. The Death Egg Ascendant's hull had begun to glow with instability at the points where Titan volleys and EMP fields intersected. All units concentrate fire there, strike with everything. Bolters, plasma, missiles, and Titan macro cannons unleashed a storm of destruction. Sparks, warp energy, and debris filled the air. Eggman's voice, now tinged with alarm, echoed across the battlefield. No, my genius cannot fail. Stabilizers adjust, dimensional core compensate. But even as he pressed buttons, the Ascendant shuddered violently. Sparks flew, hull plates buckled, and the biomechanical horror staggered, howling in frustration. Leona, the young Cadian soldier, rallied her squad through warped streets, navigating the ever-shifting terrain. Her lasgun discharged relentlessly, striking micro, robots, and assisting Space Marine squads. We fight, for Cadia, for the Emperor. Her voice, defiant, cut through chaos and fear. The combined Imperial effort began to turn the tide. Titans delivered precise volleys. EMP pulses from servitors disrupted the warp. Tech and Space Marines exploited weak points with surgical strikes. The Death Egg Ascendant trembled, its dimensional rifts flickering and failing, while the biomechanical horror staggered, its unnatural limbs twisting in agony. Eggman, frantically pressing controls, muttered under his breath, "Impossible, impossible. Genius cannot be defeated." His platform rocked violently as the Ascendant began to destabilize, sparks and warp energy arcing wildly across the battlefield. Finally, a coordinated strike from the Titan's most powerful weapons, combined with concentrated Space Marine attacks on critical weak points, caused a chain reaction. The dimensional core overloaded, erupting in a blinding flash of energy. Reality itself groaned as the rift collapsed, the Death Egg Ascendant buckled, and the Mechanical Horror fell to the ground, thrashing, broken, but not entirely destroyed. The battlefield went silent for a fleeting moment, smoke and energy flickering across the ruins. Imperial forces, battered and bloodied, regrouped, surveying the damage. Entire districts were shattered, twisted by warp energy, and survivors moved cautiously among the rubble. Yet, for the first time, Eggman's forces had faltered. Eggman himself, unharmed and still hovering above, scowled, adjusting his goggles. Fascinating. They survived, resisted, adapted. Very well, the game continues. His mind raced with new inventions, new horrors, and ways to make Cadia bow to his genius. The siege of Cadia had escalated into a war against reality itself, but the Imperium had endured. Titans still loomed, Space Marines held key positions, and human soldiers, though terrified and exhausted, still fought. Cadia had not fallen yet, but Eggman's genius, madness, and warp-fueled creations promised that the battles to come would be more terrifying than any before. Cadia's horizon burned like a dying sun. Fires stretched across ruined cities, forests, and plains, and the air was thick with the acrid smoke of burning metal and flesh. For every district that Imperial forces reclaimed, 2 more fell under Eggman's advancing mechanical horde. The Death Egg Ascendant had been damaged in the last battle, but now Eggman had introduced new horrors, Death Egg MK Roman 2 and MK Roman 3 variants, each bristling with warp-fueled weapons and spinning drills capable of leveling entire regions in minutes. From his hovering platform, Eggman grinned with unrestrained glee. Yes, yes, Cadia will become my masterpiece. 1 planet, 1 galaxy, 1 universe. The new Death Eggs deployed micro, robot swarms, warp, draining artillery, and a host of mechanical monstrosities. Each machine operated with horrifying efficiency, coordinating as if they shared a hive mind, executing complex maneuvers that outpaced even the most seasoned Imperial tacticians. The Imperium, battered and weary, scrambled to respond. Titans marched across the ravaged plains, bolter and plasma fire cutting down swaths of mechanical troops. Space Marines, though exhausted, deployed in key defensive sectors, using jump packs, drop pods, and rapid strikes to slow Eggman's advance. Cadian regiments manned artillery, field generators, and barricades, holding as best they could. Sergeant Darius surveyed the devastation from atop a crumbling fortification. We cannot stop them all, not individually, but if we concentrate our forces, we may yet blunt the spear of this madness. His eyes flicked to the distant hills, where the new Death Eggs converged on the Imperium's central command. Prepare the Titans, concentrate artillery fire, and deploy every available Space Marine squad to key choke points. Even as orders were relayed, another threat emerged. Warp energies leaking from Eggman's machines attracted chaos entities, demon, engine hybrids, twisted by the same forces Eggman had manipulated in the warp. Tentacles of shadow, fire, and metal surged across the battlefield, bolstering Eggman's forces. Fascinating, Eggman muttered. They offer loyalty or perhaps entertainment. Either way useful. The first clash was apocalyptic. Death Egg MK Roman 2 unleashed a barrage of warp-fueled cannon fire that reduced a Cadian city to molten rubble within minutes. Buzz bombers swarmed overhead, egg pawns scuttled in wave after wave, and the mechanical horror, repaired and enhanced with warp energy, tore through Imperial lines. Titans retaliated with macro cannons and volcano cannons, shaking the ground with every blast. Space Marines cut through the mechanical horde, but each advance seemed to trigger more destruction. Major Terv coordinated artillery from a distant plateau. Focus fire on the Ascendant's cores. Synchronize with the Titan's volleys. If we can destabilize even one, it will buy us time. Servitors ran across precarious ridges, connecting generators and recalibrating anti-warp devices, their metal limbs glinting in the hellish light of destruction. Sergeant Darius led an elite strike team of assault marines toward the largest Death Egg variant, weaving through the chaos. Chainswords ignited, bolters roared, and jump packs carried them over molten streets. Sparks and war energy arcs lit the air as they struck at stabilizers, exposed conduits, and energy nodes. For Cadia, for the Emperor, Darius roared, his voice cutting through the maelstrom. Yet Eggman adapted with alarming speed. Each Death Egg variant shifted in response to attacks, spinning drills, firing warp beams, and deploying mechanical reinforcements. Reality itself seemed to twist around them. Streets bent unnaturally, gravity shifted, and small groups of soldiers vanished, only to reappear in altered, horrifying configurations. The Chaos Forces added another layer of terror. Demon, engine hybrids surged alongside Eggman's machines, tearing into human and Titan alike. Tentacles of metal and flesh flailed, warp energy burned, and the ground split in grotesque eruptions. For every Mech destroyed, another arose from the warp-fused chaos, multiplying the Imperium's peril. In the heart of the battlefield, Leona led a squad of surviving Cadians alongside a contingent of space marines. "Hold the line," she shouted, firing into a horde of robots as they surged over barricades. Tanks, partially repaired from earlier battles, unleashed coordinated volleys at approaching Death Eggs. Yet for every victory, another sector fell, and the screams of the dying echoed across the war-torn plains. Eggman, watching from above, laughed with unrestrained glee. Magnificent, destruction chaos genius at work. They fight so valiantly it only makes victory sweeter. He activated the dimensional core on the newest Death Egg variant, creating localized rifts that bent reality further, making even coordinated Imperial attacks more difficult. Despite the overwhelming odds, the Imperium did not falter. Titans fired relentlessly, artillery pounded the warp-fused constructs, and space marines exploited every weak point. The battle became a brutal chess game, each side anticipating, adapting, and escalating. Entire cities were destroyed, yet in other sectors, humans and marines held their ground, buying time and inflicting casualties that, however small, kept Eggman's forces in check. By nightfall, the battlefield was a fractured hellscape of fire, twisted metal, and warp energy. Death Eggs remained operational, though damaged. Chaos hybrids patrolled the streets, the mechanical horror lurked in ruined districts, and Cadia itself groaned under the strain. Imperial forces were battered, but had survived another day. Sergeant Darius, atop a shattered bastion, surveyed the chaos. "They are many, they are relentless, but they are not invincible. Cadia will hold. We will endure, even if the cost is the blood of every soldier we have." Eggman, unscathed and exultant, hovered above the planet. "Yes, yes, this is only the beginning. Soon, all will know the true extent of genius." The planet-wide onslaught had begun. Cadia's fate hung in the balance, and the galaxy trembled before the combined horrors of Eggman's genius, warp energy, and mechanical monstrosities. The sky above Cadia was a torn canvas of red, black, and swirling war energy. Smoke rose in unending pillars from every ruined city, and the distant horizon flickered with the glow of burning Death Eggs. Eggman's forces had devastated much of the planet, yet the Imperium had endured, battered but unbroken. From a fortified bastion, Sergeant Darius observed the battlefield with grim determination. Titans, their armor scarred but functional, marched in formation. Space Marines readied for the assault, chainswords and bolters at the ready. Cadian survivors manned artillery and barricades, preparing for the strike that would decide Cadia's fate. "Today, we strike at the heart of madness," Darius said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "All forces coordinate. The Emperor commands it, we will not falter." In the distance, Eggman hovered above the Death Egg Ascendant, now fully repaired and bristling with warp-fueled weaponry. Beside it floated MK Roman II and MK Roman III variants, each pulsing with deadly energy. The dimensional core had been reinforced, threatening to tear Cadia into countless warped realities. The biomechanical horror, scarred but alive, prowled nearby, ready to defend its master. Eggman's laughter echoed across the battlefield. "Yes, yes, so many resist, so many fight, but genius cannot fail. Today, I will prove once and for all that the galaxy bows to I, Dr. Ivo Eggman." The Imperium's counterattack began. Titans fired volleys with precise coordination, energy and plasma, tearing through Death Egg defenses. Space Marines deployed via drop pods, assaulting weak points identified during previous battles. Tactical squads provided suppressive fire, while Devastators targeted warp and fused stabilizers, seeking to disrupt the dimensional core's energy flow. Amidst the assault, the biomechanical horror surged forward, attempting to crush Imperial lines. Sergeant Darius led an elite strike team to engage it directly. Chainswords clashed with warp, fused limbs, bolters tore into mechanical plating, and plasma scorched the twisted flesh-metal hybrid. Sparks and blood, both organic and mechanical, painted the battlefield as the Marines fought with unwavering discipline. Eggman, growing frantic, tapped into every weapon at his disposal. Warp rifts opened across the battlefield, reality warped and twisted, and Death Egg weapons fired in synchronized volleys that threatened to annihilate everything. Yet the Imperium adapted. Anti-warp generators stabilized critical zones, Titans leveraged coordinated volleys, and Space Marines exploited pauses in the Ascendant's attack patterns. Major Terv coordinated artillery to strike the dimensional core directly. All fire on the core, synchronize with the Titans and Space Marines' assault. Now, bolts, plasma, and warp, disruptive projectiles, converged on the glowing heart of Eggman's power. The dimensional core shuddered, rifts flickering and failing as energy feedback surged across the Ascendants. Sergeant Darius, seizing the opportunity, led his squad and a team of Cadians into the heart of the battlefield. Leona and her squad cut through egg pawns and robots, carving a path to the Ascendant's core. Titans delivered concentrated fire to weaken the structural integrity of the Death Eggs. Sparks and molten metal erupted as the first Ascendant collapsed under overwhelming combined fire. Eggman's manic voice rose over the chaos. "No, impossible. My genius cannot be defeated." The remaining Death Eggs faltered as EMP, anti-warp devices, and concentrated Titan volleys struck critical nodes. The biomechanical horror, now weakened, roared in frustration, attempting one last assault before faltering. In a decisive strike, Sergeant Darius and his team reached the dimensional core. Chainswords cut through armored conduits, plasma torches burned through warp, fused stabilizers, and explosive charges detonated with precise timing. The dimensional core screamed as it overloaded, emitting a blinding flash of energy that shattered the remaining Death Egg's defenses and destabilized Eggman's remaining forces. Eggman, clinging to his platform, realized defeat. "No, my genius, it cannot fail." The platform collapsed as the overloaded core erupted, sending him flying into a dimensional rift. Screams echoed across the battlefield, followed by silence. The surviving Imperial forces looked across the ruins. The Death Eggs were destroyed, the bio-mechanical horror lay motionless, and Cadia, though devastated, remained. Titans smoked but stood, Space Marines regrouped, and the surviving Cadians cheered through exhaustion and grief. Sergeant Darius raised his chainsword to the sky. Cadia endures, the Emperor's will has triumphed. Around him, his brothers and human allies saluted. A moment of grim victory in a planet scarred beyond recognition. Though Eggman's genius had brought the Imperium to the brink, Cadia had survived. The galaxy would remember the madness of Dr. Ivo Eggman and the courage of those who fought against impossible odds. War, destruction, and chaos had reigned for days, but in the end, the discipline, strategy, and unyielding spirit of the Imperium had prevailed. And somewhere beyond the remnants of reality, in the twisted echoes of warp and science, Eggman's laughter lingered, a promise that genius, madness, and ambition never truly die.